Avengers! Assemble.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Excelsior, the world's #1 Marvel's Avengers podcast. I'm your director, Christian Buckley, joined as always by the Apex legend, Jack Martin.
Excelsior Christian, with the absolute cavalcade of Marvel's Avengers news last week. It seems a little appropriate that we're back into the there's really not much to talk about sort of phase of the Marvel's Avengers hype cycle.
I feel that, but you know, we're going to get to this later in the show. We're going to talk a lot about Avengers, the game, the updates for the week, of course, and I want to talk about the idea of synergy with the Marvel brand and the MCU, because I'll go into this more later, but I played about 2 hours of Avengers this morning because I watched Falcon and I was just feeling it, and I was like, hell yeah, let me just play Avengers. So
yeah, seems like a really good opportunity, so I'm looking forward to talking that with you.
Absolutely. But before we dive into the show as we normally do, I'm wondering, any major Marvel content consumption over the last week?
No, I basically paused my MCU rewatch because I'm going to sit down and watch Black Panther with my girlfriend, who was watching alongside me when we were doing our 2019 Excelsior watch, and then she doesn't watch movies all too much, so sitting down for 2 hours can sometimes be a little bit too much, and it was one of those points where she was like, it's not that she wasn't feeling the movie, but she was like, all right, this is a little too long. So round 2 with Black Panther and her. I think she's looking forward to it this time. So looking forward to that, and then going to continue on through Endgame. Probably do another WandaVision rewatch, and then be fully caught up for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier finale.
Excellent.
How about you?
I was also going through a rewatch. I put it on pause. I'm still in phase 1 because Snyder Cut came out. Had to prep for that because me and Kayla both wanted to watch that. And we finished a couple shows we were working on. So MCU is coming back. But, of course, this is the world's #1 Marvel's Avengers podcast. So we will go into Fury's report detailing everything new in the game this week. Like you said, Jack, not too much new. If you want to run some missions this week, if you want to level up some characters, the low power level is Masks, which is the level 1 mission for Kate Bishop. Jack, I believe you have recommended to play this mission as Kate Bishop, so there are just 2 Kate Bishops when you come to the final cutscene.
Yeah, you'll play it as Kate Bishop, and then there's a ghost Kate Bishop. You can't see her, but she's talking, and it's not you. You can hear her voice, in different parts of the room that you eventually get to with her. It's really hilarious. So definitely check it out like that.
Of course. The high power level for this week is Anchor Points, which looked like it was another Kate Bishop mission from the thumbnail. I did not play that one. I did play Masks. The Harm Room Challenge for the week will give you Hawkeye #2 from 2012. And Jack, tell me about the marketplace this week, because we got some interesting things here.
We got a couple bangers, at least one certified banger, of course. Hulk, for all those Hulk fans out there, I know there aren't too many, but we appreciate you. You're getting Maestro, which I think that's a really great addition for that character. I think if I played Hulk more, I would be very happy with the skins that Hulk has gotten, because you got Ragnarok Hulk, now you have Maestro. You have some cool ones with him in a tuxedo, like Joe Fixit, I think it's called. There's been some really good Hulk skins for this game.
Yeah, the Hulk skins are really good. I feel like Hulk gets some pretty good coverage and variety, where Iron Man, I feel like once in a while you get the really cool one. I'm still hanging on to that one time I got a cool Thor skin, But yeah, Hulk seems pretty consistent. So Hulk's Maestro outfit is pretty cool. It is a full $14, and I did see on the subreddit that, I don't know if this was an isolated issue, but there's some sort of bug with the Maestro skin where you can see the negative space for parts of his body. So the shoulders, if he does a angel looking move when he falls and he has his fists up in the air.
Yep.
at the corner of his shoulders where they like intersect with his back, it becomes like you see like the corner of a black rectangle on both sides. So hopefully that gets patched. But
That's weird.
I did see that on the subreddit. And again, I don't know if that was an isolated incident, but worth bringing up.
Yeah. What about the other one? What's the other big one that you pointed out here?
So sometimes they'll do a recolor, right? And sometimes it really pops, and maybe not in a great way. Um, there's a cap skin in the store that is like, if you like the color blue, you will like this skin because it's like it's a normal looking cap outfit, but the blue is like on the level of the blue from the Avengers cap skin, like the Power Rangers looking suit.
They took the saturation dial and dialed it up past the max amount. It's very, very bright. Even like the reds and the whites are very saturated. So, um, if you like the look of Joss Whedon's Justice League, you're probably gonna like this costume.
Yeah, you probably will. Well, why don't we cover our updates for the game this
Oh,
week?
real quick.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. There is. I think we should shout out the Hawkeye, like collection for like 500 credits. Remember
Oh,
this thing?
sure. Thank you for that. Yeah.
So this is. I'm gonna pull it up, but Marvel's Avengers Twitter account announced that they were doing the heroic starter pack for Hawkeye. It's a one-time 500 credit purchase that comes with like a bunch of stuff within it, and it also comes with 500 credits. So you essentially pay 500 credits and get that back. So if you have that in your account already, it's essentially free. And it comes with the Hawkeye Wastelander outfit, which is like a Mad Max looking brown and olive crop top skin for
Good way to
Hawkeye.
put it.
There's a Ricochet emote, and there's a pretty cool nameplate as well. And if you have the 500 credits, it's free. As far as I'm aware, it's not on the games marketplace yet. It is on PSN. That actually costs real money, so I would suggest waiting until it's actually on there. I think it should be up maybe by the time you're listening on Saturday, maybe on Sunday. But yeah.
I'm wondering if there's a possibility that it doesn't come to the marketplace, and it's like, you know how Fortnite does the, if you want a V-Bucks pack that comes with a skin, it's like $5, and it's like a whatever skin, and then you get like 600 V-Bucks or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that's that to incentivize people like buying currency.
I think they did mention it was coming to.
Okay.
Okay, I have this tweeter here. You can get it from each platform, meaning like Xbox or PlayStation, digital store, or from the in-game marketplace.
Okay, great.
So it does sound like you can use your like in-game credits. So I have like, for example, I have like close to 7,000 right now.
Jeez, yeah.
I'll use like 500, get down to 6,500, and then immediately get that back with that purchase. So that's cool. It's essentially free if you have that. So that's a nice little addition.
Yeah, that's great. And as somebody who likes Hawkeye a lot, which we'll get to in a second, I will probably go in on that because I just the other night decided to go in on his challenge card. So I have acquired his challenge card. I'm down to like 2,300 credits because I haven't maxed out anybody's challenge card except Thor. So I still have a decent number of credits to earn. But yeah, I think there's a way to be smart about the way you earn credits in this game and how you spend credits. And I think this, like you mentioned, is a really good instance of making a smart investment in the marketplace system for this game.
Totally. Even if this isn't a character that you intend on using, if you have the credits, again, like what we've been saying, it's practically free. You get that back instantly. So you might as well just go for it.
Yeah, and am I wrong? Is there also a nameplate associated with this?
Yep, there is a nameplate. It is like the comics pink and purple Hawkeye, which I really like. I don't know if we've seen that yet in his marketplace. I think that'd be a really great addition. But
Hell yeah.
it's him basically pulling a bow back. It's horizontal, obviously. Looks really cool. I like that nameplate. I might switch to that.
Very, very nice. Like we mentioned, we both been playing a little bit of Hawkeye, so our updates is coming back as a segment because we've been playing the game pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Uh, Jack, hit me with what you've been doing this past week with Marvel's Avengers.
So I played a decent amount last night, actually. And now that I'm thinking about it, I played a disgusting amount of this game. And the reason I say that is because I decided to go after the 30 Challenge 3 mission trophy for this game.
Ooh, okay.
I did that on PS4. I was doing a little test. I wanted to make sure if I got that trophy on PS4, I wouldn't get it on PS5 because I just want to have that buffer for when we both go for the platinum simultaneously if we end up doing that. So I got it on PS4. Well, on the PS4 version on my PS5. Right. Went back to the PS5 version. Didn't pop. So I was like, cool. Then I said, I got some podcasts to listen to. I'm just going to keep steamrolling this on the PS5 version. So I did like 20, 25 challenge 3s on PS5 just so I didn't pop that trophy and just so I had it as that added buffer. So pretty much that's all I did. And yeah, I'm inching my way to that platinum.
Excellent. Yes, I will absolutely join you for this platinum. This is a game I want to platinum. I think the biggest hurdle I still have is I never went to finish the Avengers iconic questline. I still have a couple things left from like Monica's post launch campaign thing. So once I finish that out and I get the rest of the strong boxes, I will be in very good shape for doing that platinum with you.
And if you end up getting the PS5, you're gonna be sitting pretty with 2 platinums for Marvel's Avengers.
Hell yeah!
It feels so right to have 2 platinums after this long journey.
Oh, for sure, we've earned that. So last week we recorded our impressions of Future Imperfect with me only playing the first mission, and there was a point in my playtime, Jack, where I was starting a mission and I was like, I think this is the last mission, like, yeah, because of the way you framed it of like, oh wow, that was it. So it's pretty wild because I feel like we have that mission in the Future Wastelands. We have a mission in Brooklyn or wherever Hawkeye's apartment is. And then we have the mission with Hawkeye going into the future. And then we have the Maestro thing, and that's it.
Yeah, it's like 3.5 missions.
Yeah.
It feels noticeably shorter than the Taking Aim campaign for Kate. Did you get that sense when you were like getting to the end of it?
Yeah, I think I streamed the rest of my playthrough, and it took me like, I think obviously my time it was inflated because I was streaming it, but it probably took me like 2.5 hours in addition to the 30 minutes I put in for the first mission before we recorded. And compared to Kate, which was much closer to like 4. So it definitely was shorter. And I think you're right. You talked last week a lot about how it very much is apparent that this was a part 2 or finale to the storyline set up in Kate's expansion. Or storyline, I should say, her operation. But yeah, overall, I like the area. I haven't been back there much since I beat the campaign. But I thought it was interesting. I'm kind of lost on the story, honestly. Like, I think Fury is frozen in time because that was Monica's solution to stop the invasion. She was just like, hey, we'll freeze this until somebody in the past can come here and fix it.
I guess so, right? It looked like she had used the Cosmic Cube to do that, which is where we see that on the roadmap. There's a Cosmic Cube event eventually with Monica. So, yeah, the story itself wasn't as captivating as Kate's story, which I think had a really good start, middle, and finish.
Yes.
And like it left off in a really interesting way, and it seemed like it was setting up the rest of the game's story as a whole rather than just the Hawkeye expansion. And this one just sort of ended, right? Like you're looking for Nick Fury the whole time, and eventually you and Old Man Hawkeye get to him and he's just frozen, and then you guys are like, I guess we'll go home. It's like, okay, I guess that's it.
Since week -2 of this podcast, right? Like I've been waiting for Fury to be a huge player in this game. That's why Fury's Report is a segment, and we found him, And like you said, it's just like, okay, let's go home. let's just
Yeah.
let's just leave
It
this for another day.
it was a little odd, I will
Yeah.
say. Um and it has me feeling like, to me, I'm just like, where do we go now? Right? Like, what character is the next person to move the needle in this story? I'm
Hmm.
hoping it's not Black Panther, because that to me is a long ways away, I would
Yeah.
imagine. And we haven't gotten any new character announcements. I'm hoping we get at least one before Black Panther. I think that's a safe bet. Like, this summer we get a character. I don't know who that would be, but I think that'd be welcome.
I would love that, but I highly doubt it. One thing I wanted to mention as well is I think on a dev stream potentially, uh, CD said that the Cosmic Cube villain sector will be the culmination of Monica's story with the Cosmic Cube. So when that drops, there will be some sort of resolution to the, like you said, kind of sudden ending of Clint's storyline. So we'll get some story clarification there, and I think that'll probably tee up what the future is, because we know with the Black Panther expansion, we have Claw in the trailer having a voiceover conversation with Monica, talking about him helping her with some plan, her helping him so he can get the vibranium and have some mutual agreement. So definitely, we haven't seen the last of Monica, which is an interesting choice. But yeah, I think the direct future imperfect arc of like what's up with the future Fury and Monica, I think will probably come to a conclusion with the villain sector. And I could see a world where the path we go on is leading to a culmination with the Kree invasion. So we just like build to that and we prepare for that, right? So maybe Monica wants the vibranium so she can build a weapon, like an actual weapon, not just use the cube to like fight these monsters. So
Totally. It feels like that story though is quite literally on pause
yeah,
until we do
kind of.
get we do get that Cosmic Cube event, like what you said, and I want to know what's after that. Like, to like I don't want to, like, Black Panther obviously is a huge expansion. I'm wondering whether the story is going to be like tied integrally to what Monica's doing. I know obviously she's in it and involved, or whether like Claw is just sort of doing a side thing for her rather than her. Like, maybe I'm not explaining it exactly right, but it seems like that might be a side objective rather than the whole Kree invasion arc. You know what I mean?
Sure, I can see that. I think there's a world where Claw is coming at it from that angle, but for Monica, that is like this is a step to
Sure.
her plan for protecting whatever for the Kree invasion. So
Right.
uh, we'll see what happens there. But I have to say, as far as Clint goes, I did get him to level 50, and
Nice.
I really enjoy his playstyle, and I'm slightly surprised. I think I'm going to get him to 150 because I slightly, like only slightly, prefer the intricacies of him over Kate to a slight advantage. Like I like his heroics more. I like that he has a heal ability. Um, I think that his combo, like triangle and square things for holding those to do some like fancy flare moves at the end of just melee attacks. It works better for the pace I like to play at because I think Kate is really good at melee, but for some reason I just feel like I'm finding it easier to play Clint range than I was with Kate. Um, and another aspect of that I think is the pulsar arrows. I kitted them out with some skill that allows me to like I don't know how many I can do before they start just exploding on impact, but if there's a dreadbot jack, I did this a lot in the harm rooms. If there is a dreadbot, I can shoot maybe like 8 pulsar arrows into them, and then I can wait for all of them to turn red, and then I can trigger the explosion. It like 80% of the health of that dreadbot is gone. I love that.
Wow.
That is so rewarding if I can like pull that off. I really enjoy that way of like playing kind of strategically with Clint.
Yeah. It seems like this has been happening with all the characters. There's a certain level of like granularity with all of them, and
Mm-hmm.
if you get into like the nitty gritty of their like mastery skill trees specifically, you can really kit them out in some interesting ways. So yeah, that sounds like a very unique way of using him.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me personally, I agree with you. I love his healing spell. I'll call it.
Yeah.
Um, his R1 is useful. You can get some cool ones where it's like a tunnel of like a tornado essentially.
Yeah, I got that fire tornado, dude.
Yeah,
Incredible.
that one's really cool. There's a spark one as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm rocking the tornado one. And his ultimate is very good. I don't like Kate's ultimate that much.
Yeah, me either.
It's kind of not super useful. Her R1 ability with the suction part, like the whirlpool aspect, is really cool. I like using that.
Yeah. Her
So
L1 is
personally,
useless to me. I don't know
what's
how
her
you
L1
feel.
again?
She spawns like the hologram, and I think it's supposed to draw aggro, but it feels like it never works.
Yeah, yeah. Now that we're talking about it, I think Hawkeye Clint has the better ultimates for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like the L1 R1
Yeah, I think Kate's traversal is
overall.
better, like you mentioned last week, but in the intricacies of like every other aspect, I think I prefer Clint.
Yeah, I would have to go back to Kate. I think last week I said still prefer Kate over
Mm-hmm.
Clint, but I do agree that he has the better ultimate abilities overall.
Yeah, and come time for that raid, I know that out of every person I know that enjoys this game that I will probably be raiding with, I know none of them are going to want to be the healer, so I'm just biting the bullet. I already like using bow characters, so it's like I don't lose that much, but I really think he's useful for like support, and I really like that role in this game.
I have a
So,
really sad Iron Man update.
oh no, what's up?
So they nerfed him big time. So I don't know if I ever explained this on the show, but Iron Man has a really cool ability where if you hold down the right trigger, he will put down a shield that
Mm-hmm.
I think if you put perks into it, it like gives you intrinsic back. And apparently this was a glitch because I don't think they wanted this in the game. When you put the shield down and you keep tapping the right trigger, his intrinsic will just keep going up and up and up, and eventually you can just become overcharged and just have infinite ammo at that point. So for me, that was the meta, was putting down the shield, getting overcharged, and just having infinite ammo, and just, doing that over and over again.
Yeah.
Jumped in on PS5, tried doing that, didn't work, and I kept trying to do it, and it never worked. So I think that's patched, and it makes me very sad.
I'm very sorry to hear that. I honestly, I'm sure Thor, I'm sure Thor has also been nerfed because like some of the numbers I was getting are ridiculous with him. I saw on the subreddit, somebody has a glass cannon Thor where their like damage output I think is like 29,000. Like the way you can build some of these characters is ridiculous. Personally, I'd love if they lean into that at some point. I know it's going to be really hard to balance for like raid content, but I think it's fun when you can kind of break the game like that, you know?
Yeah. And right now, it's a single player game for all intents and purposes, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and I honestly, they probably could leave some of it in because I know Destiny, again, sorry, but Destiny faces issues because they have PvE and PvP. And I
Right.
think recently, after it's like 7 years, they finally have started to like treat them differently and scale them differently. But yeah, if it's strictly PvE here, and as much as we would love a Civil War expansion where you can do some PvP, I one that's no time soon. So two, if they want to lean into the broken OP hero feeling, then yeah, go for it. Two other things I wanted to comment on though in my time with Clint this week. Well, the easy thing, no level 50 skin. Again, really weird. It should probably just be Old Man Clint for the level 50 skin. I don't know why it's
Yeah,
not.
that's the easy answer. Like, I was really upset last week when I found out that they literally give it to you and then just take it away.
Mm-hmm.
I I think that's a bit unfair. I know skins are optional, but you literally play as that skin for the first mission, and then they lock it behind a paywall. Like, that just doesn't sit well with me. And yeah, you're right. The fact that he does not have a level 50 skin like every other character has, it's quite bizarre. So yeah, I think you're right. That should be the old man Hawkeye.
Yeah, it's strange, and it's just because I can see the comparison in my head. I think it's very different, maybe in a subtle way, from Maestro, because like one, Hulk already has a level 50 skin, and two, I think like Maestro technically is kind of a different character in a way if you look at it that way, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think having a villain version of a character in your story and then charging for the villain version to be a skin for your hero, I can see the justification there, right? But like, and I know they kind of treat in the campaign Old Man Clint and Clint as different characters, but like you said, we do play as them. There's no level 50 skin. Just kind of surprising to me. Also, like, I saw people talk about this on the subreddit too. Like, for the iconic questline for Clint, the iconic skin you unlock is a skin you're already given from the campaign. So like, I played his iconic quest. I was going for the objectives wearing the skin, and then I popped it, and I was like, did it not pop? And then I like looked on the subreddit and I was like, oh, it's the same. Why did I just do that? Like, what? It was weird.
Yeah, that's bizarre. And when you compare it to Kate, she already had, of course, like anyone else, who had the level 50 skin. And I don't think she had any weird stuff going on with doing missions to get skins that you already have. So, yeah, it seems like hopefully this is just an anomaly, but it is weird and worth pointing out.
Yeah, and I think Crystal Dynamics has given me reason to believe that they might do a make good on this, right? Like, I could see them be like, hey, here's an extra Hawkeye skin. Sorry there was no level 50, or the weird iconic thing. Like, I could see a world where that happens, right? Based on their track record.
They're usually good about, like, for you and the Thor skin, and for some people it was broken, and you lucked out and you got the skin eventually, and I think you got the credits back. So yeah, they've done stuff like that before. So hopefully they do something for this, because it is a bit odd.
Yeah, plus we've seen pretty recently, too, the past 2 weeks, there's been free items in the marketplace, and one of them was a skin. So I think there's a reasonable expectation that we could have a make good on the weird duplicate iconic skin, the no level 50 skin, and the weird old man Clint issue. But the last thing I wanted to mention, do you know off the top of your head where you left off with Clint? Do you have him at level 50?
So I have Avengers pulled up right now. I'm at 38. I did a villain sector right before we recorded, and I got a few levels up. I'm at power level 66. Shout out to my dude Palpatine.
Hey.
And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you how you feel about the scaling experience level difficulty thing, because maybe my eyes just glazed over and I lost track of time, but I really don't feel that getting Clint to level 50 felt significantly different than getting any of my other characters to level 50 after the initial one, right? Like, to me, it just felt like it was the same amount of effort. I was grinding out harm rooms, so maybe that was like why it didn't feel as long to me, and I was like enjoying myself because of how he plays and listening to podcasts, but yeah, it didn't really stand out to me of like, oh, this is significantly different. I think I put maybe like an hour and a half into grinding him for like 2 nights, and then I was capped after the story.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people say that, where they did implement the XP changes, but it doesn't seem too significantly challenging to actually get them up to max level. I haven't gone out and gotten Hawkeye to level 50, so I can't necessarily speak to that, but I agree with you to an extent. It doesn't necessarily feel too much more strenuous to actually go out and do that. I haven't really been playing him all too much after his campaign, so I haven't really been trying to get to level 50, but I'm only like 12 levels away, and it doesn't feel that far, and it doesn't feel like too much of a grind to actually go through and do that. So there are definitely changes, but they might not feel as dramatic as we might have expected.
Yeah, and I think the way it was framed and maybe the no full transparency about how the curve worked was like made us all have that fear after the track record of not everything being the best with this game. So like I do think the panic in hindsight was probably a fair amount overblown, but I don't think it was unwarranted, but like I think it was definitely it's way less of a deal than we all thought it was going to be, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
So, with that though, we talked a bit about skins. We have, of course, MCU skins coming in May, despite the fact that Black Widow was delayed. But I think we should breeze on over to Stark Realities because I want to ask you, Jack. We see that they're teeing up, or they were teeing up, the Red Room Challenge, the MCU skins to be released with Black Widow. We can get to this again, or we can talk about it now. Black Widow was recently delayed officially to July 9th. It's actually coming out on Disney Plus, releasing in theaters. So there was the community, they had the question, is the event getting delayed? Because it was very clear this event, these skins are timed for the release of Black Widow. Crystal Dynamics has said that, like, hey, we have no say in how the movie works, but this is our content. It's coming out when we say it's coming out. So it's not getting delayed to be July with the movie. We're still getting the stuff in May. Or, like, whenever it was an unspoken thing that it was May, right? Because it was spring, it was Black Widow. Like, that makes sense.
Yeah, you would expect around that time, whether it's
Yeah.
late April or sometime in May.
Yes.
Right.
So that's sort of the first showcase of Crystal Dynamics going out of their way to try and have some synergy with the overall Marvel brand, the way a lot of these apps do, where it's like, hey, you can earn Wanda and Vision in Marvel Future Fight on your iPhone for an event because WandaVision's happening, or skins or anything like that. So we all wanted that out of this game, and we have confirmation that they're at least trying that. So I want to ask you, do you think they should double down on that? Like, do you think it's a smart idea? Like, I mean, obviously we want this to happen, but do you think that this is something they should really consider moving forward, not just for the MCU, but the brand as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen it before with even games like Fortnite. Like when Infinity War came out, that was an opportunity for Fortnite to reach out to Marvel and have the Thanos event, and then do that again in a similar yet unique fashion when Endgame came out. And I think it was at that point in Fortnite's lifespan when the Infinity War Thanos event came out, where when that happened, that game just blew up even more than it already was because
Mm-hmm.
of that integration to the MCU. The MCU is just such a ubiquitous brand at this point that I think Greg Miller said something like this, where the MCU is now Marvel Prime. It's no longer the comics. The MCU is just such a household franchise that when people think of Marvel, it's the MCU, right? It's
Yeah.
not the comics. The comics is, for all intents and purposes, backstory for people who want to go check that out.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah, I think tying this game to the hype and the everlasting future of the MCU would be a really smart idea.
yeah, because like watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier this morning, right? I know Bucky's on that list of characters, and seeing this show, I was like, man, I'd really love to play as Bucky right now, because I feel like he'd be such a cool character. You know, mix in guns, mix in like some blocking some stuff with the arm. Like, I think it's a really smart idea. It's unfortunate that they didn't plan around that in the past, because the thing is, I think you could realistically maintain your own specific storyline that they want to do here and they're clearly passionate about, and honestly they're doing a pretty good job with for the most part. I think you can still draw that line of like, hey, yeah, just we're planning around this. So let's say in March the character that dropped was Falcon. or Winter Soldier, right? Like, you can work them into the game the way you were planning on doing it anyway. Just time that release to sort of line up. Or similar to what they're doing with the Red Room thing, which, again, I don't think it always has to be a character, but like Black Widow's on people's minds. Have an event in the game that is about Black Widow, tied in with her origin story. Have Laura Bailey come in, do some VO for a challenge gauntlet, and then yeah, like I think there's a reasonable way you can do that, and even beyond character drops, like I'm saying with the events, like do skins, do nameplates. Like if later this year we can earn nameplates for Clint and Kate that are like promo key art for the Hawkeye series on Disney Plus, that'd be super cool. I'd go into the game to try and get those, right? Like I know you have to deal with a lot of licensing there, but like it's still all under the Marvel umbrella, so I think it's easier than, you know, doing some weird crossover like Fortnite does, right? Like I think there's a way that the audience looks at the Marvel brand and sees like all these opportunities, and there's the frustration and curiosity of like, why aren't you doing this?
Well, what's great about this game is it has the integration backing of Marvel games, where it is probably relatively easier than Fortnite, I would say, to just reach out to Marvel Games and be like, hey, we understand that this MCU project is coming up. We want to have a small integration into this game with a skin or a small event with that. Is that feasible? Can we do that? And that's probably a fairly easy conversation, and that's probably something that Marvel Games wants from them, right? Because just like Square Enix, they want this game to be profitable and proliferate past just a year long of its life cycle. So I was going to say like a softball, easy prediction. You got it with the Hawkeye event, definitely. I totally think that there will be some sort of Ms. Marvel event, whatever that may be, whether it's a customizable harm room or something like that, once the Ms. Marvel TV show comes out, which is scheduled for later this year. So I think that is something to potentially expect. Because, yeah, like Crystal Dynamics, like everyone else, has access to what's going on in the MCU in the future, because they're very good about laying out the MCU roadmap. So they're probably looking at that. They're probably talking with people from Marvel Studios and trying to work out some levels of integration. So I think Black Widow is the first of potentially many brand synergy for this game and the MCU.
Yeah, I hope it works out for them. I assume that the game will spike some interest. I did see actually that the Hawkeye expansion got concurrent players on Steam back up to like okay numbers. So like I think there is a world where absolutely this game can rise above its reputation, and I think it, like we're saying, I don't want to like say that developing things for a live game is easy, because it's not, but like I think there are simple ways to generate excitement for this game, right? Like clearly the Tachyon Rifts is not the way to do it, but you're close, right? Like something on that scale, but package it in a way that's more exciting, right? Like I think that is enough to sustain interest, at least get concurrence back once in a while, to have people still thinking about this game. Because even if they're not obviously Destiny levels, or it's not a live service, I don't think it is ever going to attain that, but it could still be a co-op game, right? Like if you want people to remember this game and think positively about it, then like give them reasons to pop back in, you know? And like you mentioned, the MCU is so ubiquitous that bet you that there are hardcore MCU fans. I know some that bought the game, haven't really touched it, but if they hear like, hey, for a limited time, get this super cool Spider-Man No Way Home logo as a nameplate for Spidey, like, okay, I'll hop in for an hour, earn that, you know? Like, I think there's a potential to do that, and depending on how frequently they want to put stuff out, I don't think you have to draw the line at the MCU, but I think that's a good starting point, right? And hopefully Black Widow does that for the game. Now, how large of a update do you imagine the Red Room thing is going to be? Do you think it is going to be smaller scale, like we're kind of pitching might be a good start, or do you think this is going to be pretty significant?
I think it's a reskinned harm room. I think it is essentially going to fall into that vein where you are fighting within a contained room. It's going to look different. It's going to be red, surprise, and there'll be probably like waves of enemies you fight. I think it'll be largely comparable to the harm rooms that we have. I think that was in the descriptor of the event, if I'm not mistaken. So I think it's going to be essentially a reskin of the harm room, and like what we were thinking, maybe by the end of it, there's some challenges associated with it. You unlock a skin or a nameplate or any litany of cosmetics. So I think that is a nice, small, easy marketing win because you can have these, whether it does end up being reskinned things that we have in the game, which we're all very familiar with at this point.
Yes.
If there's a reason to go in and get something that is attached to the MCU, I think even if it is reskinned content, I think that's a nice way to get people back and get people the stuff that they want, because the fervor for the MCU in this game is so intense.
Yeah, like I can imagine a Tachyon Rift style thing, like just repackaging that, and the incentive is like some like the time travel endgame suit, right? Because it's dealing with time. Like I think you can repackage things like you're saying in a way that's exciting. It's just the way you frame it, and I think moving forward, that is the thing would like to see them do the most if they want to do some synergy, because there's so much Marvel, and specifically this year with the MCU, there's so much coming that not all of it is going to line up perfectly with what they have planned for year one, but I think there is plenty of opportunity, and especially for a year two or a year three, maybe they see how well this can do for just the day-to-day life of the game and plan more significant content drops in the future, like characters or expansions, around the release of big budget movies. I think that's pretty reasonable to see, maybe, down the line.
I agree. I think it will be, like what you said, year 2 or 3 until we get the synchronized, like, character drops.
Yeah.
But I think we're getting it in May. I think from now on, we will definitely get, maybe not for every MCU project, but for a decent amount, I think we will get small reskinned event type things to get you into the game that correspond with the release of whatever character it's attached to. So if we get like a Ms. Marvel threat sector or whatever it may be that's unique to her, maybe every enemy's stretchy for some reason. And then by the end of that challenge, you get a skin or a nameplate or something like that associated with that. Small, easy thing to get people back into this game.
Yeah, and I think a perfect example of that is like look at the leaked character sheets, right? One of the ones that seems like they're actively developing, because there were like 30 of them before, but there's a handful that we keep hearing about. Like She-Hulk is on that list of characters that are probably going to end up in the game. I think that She-Hulk show on Disney Plus is maybe next year. Maybe reposition some things, have that ready to drop around She-Hulk, right? Like I think that's stuff like that makes sense down the line, because year one we kind of know what to expect, I think, but
yeah, totally
looking forward to it, because like you mentioned, there's not a lot of opportunities this year to have a one-to-one content drop, because meanwhile we do know that the MCU has changed their plans for 2021, not in a huge way, but in a significant way, I think. Like we mentioned, Black Widow finally has Black Widow decided that they should drop on Disney Plus, but they also pushed the movie back another 2 months. So,
yes,
July 9th on Disney Plus and in theaters, we will be able to finally see Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, presumably her final time in this role. Thoughts, Jack?
This is great news. So, everyone has been dying for this movie in particular, to just hit Disney Plus. Like, it should have come out last year. Everyone was just at that point just saying, release it. We are in desperate need of new movies right now. And of course, Marvel has the biggest movies of all time. So this is the one that people wanted to see. So it's nice that there is the option of, if you want to go to the movie theaters and it's safe to do so, which I'm not too sure it will be by July. I'm hoping. I got my first shot recently. Hopefully, maybe in July everything will be somewhat more normal, where more people can go to the movie theater. Still not sure about that, but it's nice that there will be that safety net of the Disney Plus Premium option for $30. So I think it is the best possible option going forward. And it seems like pushing it to July 9th, Marvel's like, we're hoping people get vaccinated. We are hoping to save the summer blockbuster season. That seems to be the logic behind this.
Yeah, I think you're right, because you wonder, like, okay, well, they finally decided to put it on Disney Plus, so why are they pushing it again? But it's absolutely, you're right, because they want to wait for as many people as possible to be vaccinated. So I'm sure in the contracts there is some sort of revenue thing with Scarlett Johansson. So, like, having it in theaters will probably cost them less on the back end of, like, splitting the profits, right? But, like, I think that's the reason for the delay, because I know I will be vaccinated by then, and I am low on the list of priority. So, like, I think it'll be pretty solid by then. In terms of just, like, overall public perception, I think the majority of people probably won't have an issue going to a theater by then. I certainly will not, but yeah, I think it's a calculated move, right? But in terms of the rest of the slate, Shang-Chi was also delayed now from July to September 3rd. So cool. That will be theaters only as far as we know right now.
Yeah, I would not be surprised, obviously, if this comes out like Black Widow, where it's Disney Plus and theaters. Mm-hmm. I think, like what you said, right now it is just hitting theaters, but I think Kevin Feige said about Black Widow a couple weeks ago, or someone in Marvel was like, I think it was the president of Disney, was like, when we decide about the Black Widow thing, it will be like a last minute decision. And they push it, and this is their last straw essentially, and they had to put it on Disney Plus. So, do you think, like, if everything is all safe and you're vaccinated by the point of July 9th, do you think you would go to the theaters for this, or would you go for Black Widow, or would you do the Disney Plus Premium?
I mean, I don't have an issue watching it on Disney Plus, I think, because I recently watched the Snyder Cut on a TV, and I completely enjoyed myself with that, and I honestly, it probably would have been worse seeing that in a theater just because of the length. But with Black Widow, yeah, like, obviously I love going to the movie theater. Obviously I love going to the movie theater for Marvel movies. But Black Widow, as much as I love that character, like, I don't know if I love the character enough, even though it's her final time in the role. I don't know if I love that character enough to, like, finally take the dive back into a theater. Who knows? Maybe if I get fully vaccinated by, like, end of April, I'll have a few months with it in me, and I'll be like, okay, I'm fine. But I still think there is that adjustment period. So, yeah, I would love to. But totally. I think it's just, how the next few months go socially. But what about you?
Yeah,
what do you think?
It is at the point where, like, March right now in terms of the vaccine rollout and how people are doing and shots going into actual arms will be noticeably different than July at that point, right? Like, in our state, everyone will be eligible. I think it's 18 or up or 16 or up by April 19th. Mm-hmm. So by July, hopefully, a significant amount of people will be vaccinated, and this is like a statewide thing. So it could be different state by state. So if there are experts saying it is safe to, when you're vaccinated, to go to the movies in the summer, then I will definitely consider doing that for Black Widow. But I do like having the option for Disney Plus Premium. So yeah, I think it will come down to a few weeks before. What's the feeling like? Is because this would be the first movie to get me back, obviously. So I would have to just listen to what experts are saying, and if it's safe, then I would probably do it. If it's questionable, I would do Disney Plus probably.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the exact same boat as you. And this fall there's a bunch of things I'd love to see in the theater, right? Like I'm excited for Resident Evil. I think Shang-Chi is going to be very exciting. That's one of my most anticipated Marvel projects for this year. And of course, like Spider-Man, thankfully Eternals and Spider-Man were not delayed by the push of Shang-Chi and Black Widow. So they are still maintaining for this year. So we are getting 4 Marvel movies in the back half of this year, which is wild to think of.
Insane.
And
Gotta
shows.
catch up. Yeah.
And we're getting shows at the same time.
This year is, like, talk about having no MCU content in 2020. 2021 is, like, in excess of MCU content. And yeah. I hope it doesn't feel bloated, but, man, we're time to buckle in, really.
Well, we will see how that all fares. But like you mentioned, the MCU being on a break, it is continuing once again because it's been confirmed, or it's reported to be soon confirmed, that Captain Marvel 2 and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania are set to begin filming this summer. So Ant-Man shooting soon is kind of surprising. I kind of thought that movie was like 2023 or 24, honestly.
Yeah. It always surprises me that Marvel projects end and sort of pick up almost immediately in a lot of ways. So it's gonna be great to see them back. That name is still a little too much for me, but you know how much I love Ant-Man and the Wasp, so I'm quite excited for this one.
Yeah, and the reason I'm surprised, I think, is because pairing this news with Captain Marvel is set for next year. So, like,
yeah,
if they're both shooting this year, I'd be surprised if one of them is, like, way further out than the other, but looking forward to that. So, with all of that, Jack, do you want to dive into Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, spoiler-free impressions. Episode 2, I forget the title of the episode. Do you recall it?
Star Spangled Man, I believe.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Spoiler-free impressions of this episode. What did you think? What are your thoughts?
Sure. I really enjoyed this episode. Obviously, this is called The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, so we finally got that with this episode. It was really great to see their dynamic really fleshed out in this. Of course, it was set up in Civil War with their back and forth being playfully hostile, and we get that times 1,000 in this episode. And I really adored that, and it got me. It was a slower episode in terms of more conversations and dialogue between characters than actually like plot moving forward. That's not necessarily a bad thing. I think slow episodes can be incredible in TV shows, and this was a really great one. So I loved how this episode took its time in developing and fleshing out that relationship between Sam and Bucky, and it has me really excited to see how they're going to progress going forward. How about you, Christian?
Yeah, I will double down on what you said. One of my favorite things about the Disney Plus series, I think Mandalorian I'll include in this to a lesser extent, but I have hopes for Kenobi along the same lines. Like, I love doing the television thing because obviously we get the budget of a Marvel Studios film, but they put a focus on character in a way that I feel like the MCU rarely does on like films. Because already between like seeing WandaVision happen and just 2 episodes of this show, I feel like the main characters of both of these series are more realized than some characters that have been in since the beginning. Like, I feel like, I don't know if that's a reach to say, but like I feel like I know these characters way better than I ever knew Hawkeye in the MCU, right? Like, and he's been around for a long time, and I think he's on the same level of parity in terms of like ranking of relevance as like some of these characters that we're seeing fleshed out. So I really enjoy going in on the character based stuff, and I prefer if the shows keep up with that. You know, save the larger, not surface level, but like the larger scale spectacle things for the big screen, and then really go in when you have the opportunity to here.
Yeah, I think that the format of television, just with this being essentially, like Kevin Feige put it, just like a 6-hour project, that obviously just gives you more time with the characters and more time to explore what's going on inside their heads. So yeah, totally. I don't think that's a stretch at all, because Hawkeye, I don't imagine, had too many lines in the MCU, right? From his him popping up in what, like 2010, 2011, all the way through Endgame. He hasn't really had that much, and I think we've already pretty much got more with these two characters in this show already. So yeah, I agree with you. I love the format, and I just like how we can delve in further with what's going on with these characters.
Yeah, and in terms of the episode and the types of scenarios that they go through to flesh out these characters together, I loved it. I thought it was a very strong character building episode. So, why don't we dip into spoilers? So,
Sure.
the show has a cold open this week, which I thought was fun. We pick up with John Walker, the new Captain America, who is in his old high school locker room, which it's throwing in all of us with this character who at the end of last week are all just like, no, don't like that. And then we see this character with clearly like people he's close to, is presumably his best friend, maybe some sort of a partner. Like, we see him in this state being grounded after running into that shock value from last week of like he's Captain America. It's like, we don't like that. So I thought it was an interesting choice to lead the episode like that and have him out the gate struggling with what it means to be Captain America and having to fit into this propaganda role the way that Steve was when he was first thrown in there. And, you know, the whole Good Morning America thing, the marching band. It was a very interesting way to open up this episode. What did you think of this?
Yeah, totally. I was really surprised by this, and I'm hoping by the end of the show he is more of a complex character that isn't just like a Hayward from WandaVision and is just
Yes.
like, you're just the bad guy. It seems like this episode goes a long way in saying that John Walker wants to adopt this mantle because it is like a incredible opportunity that I'm sure he jumped at. He is clearly a government tool,
Yes.
and he's definitely a douche. He's very cocky, but I want to quote something from the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's an a-hole, but not 100% a dick. And that's how I feel about John Walker right now. I feel like he wants to do the right thing, but he does seem very cocky and seems a little bit arrogant right now. And by the end of the episode, there is the tension between him and Bucky and Sam, as well as his partner. So I'm hoping by the end of this show, John Walker is not the outright evil guy, and by the end of it, he realizes maybe he was just being manipulated. I hope that's where they're going with this. I don't want him to just be generic bad guy. He's bad because he stole Captain America's identity, blah, blah, blah. I hope that
Right.
he's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting, because the way the MCU in the past has tackled, the involvement of military in these sorts of things and like government regulation of heroes. Like, I think there's an interesting story to tell there, and we see, which we'll get to, this episode and last week's deals with a lot of complex themes for the MCU. So, like, the idea of having John Walker, who in the comics, as far as I know, he's not a villain. Like, he's not like a perfect guy. He's not like a great hero like Steve Rogers or anything. But like, as far as I know, U.S. Agent isn't like a villain. I think he can be like kind of a douche, like you said, but I don't think he's a villain. Like, as far as I know, I haven't read many comics, or I don't know if any with him, but yeah, I think clearly they're setting him up to be an antagonist, and they're doing a good job with it because I do not like this man. But
Yeah.
yeah, I wonder what their plan is for him, because I think similar to someone like a Zemo, who is a character who was very rich and very well realized. They held on to Zemo, and I think it was smart to do that. So I could see a world where, not in the villain way, but like having John Walker in the end be like, hey, I'm not Captain America. I still have this role for the government. Call me U.S. agent. I have a different suit. And he's like less in the spotlight. I think there could be a world where you can still develop this character and not have him be just, the turncoat bad guy, which honestly, I love that you said I hope that doesn't happen, because you know how Infus Nest in this episode gets a text and it says like, I want my serum back, or like, you stole what's mine.
Yeah.
Jack, my immediate thought was that anonymous text was from John Walker, because he wants the serum to fully transform into Captain America.
Please God, no.
I know.
Please
I
God,
think
no.
I think that's where we're going.
Man, Marvel does have that problem where they introduce so many nuanced perspectives, like with WandaVision and dealing with grief and all that, and this show dealing with the idea of guilt and race as well. They always structure it around like a very generic, overarching story, or there's elements of that sort of generic aspects to that. Oh, man, I'm hoping they don't do that. I that would upset me. I would find it very interesting if John Walker puts on the suit. He's very cocky. He's very eager to start doing this, and realizes that he is a tool of the government and follows maybe a similar trajectory that Steve did, where he realizes that, like, I don't want to be this tool anymore, and then hopefully he just, I assume, gives up the suit and is like, I'm done with this. I don't want to be the tool. I think that'd be an interesting perspective.
Sure.
But I don't know. It might be generic after all.
Yeah, I do see some writings on the wall about the serum stuff, because I assumed that all those vaccines they were talking about were just mass-produced serum. I don't know if you got that vibe.
Did you feel uneasy when Bucky pulled in? He's like, they got a lot of vaccines in here. And I was like, oh, God.
yeah. And, like, also the fact that, was it Hoskins? Or Hawkins was his partner? Yep. Hoskins. So Walker and Hoskins showing up, and then they're like, oh, we tracked Red Wing. Like, I don't know. I think maybe they might have been tracking that super soldier serum. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I could see you go down that path, because I think the super soldier serum is something that's going to be integral to the series, because in this episode, we know all the potential replacements for Captain America are not super soldiers, being Walker and Sam, and we visit Isaiah Bradley in this episode.
Yes.
Were you familiar with Isaiah Bradley before this episode?
I unfortunately did. I don't think I'm going to do this going forward with this particular show. I watched the new Rockstars breakdown of this, and in the credits from last episode, there was a reference to Isaiah Bradley, and then they talked about how his background in the comics, and I wish that was a surprise to me, but do you want to go into that a little bit?
Sure. So I've definitely heard this. Back at our alma mater, I took a comic book class, and we talked a lot about race when it came to superheroes at one point. And my professor, like, offhand mentioned that there was a black Captain America before Sam Wilson. So I was aware of this concept. I didn't know the details, though. So Isaiah Bradley is introduced in this episode as a former contact of Bucky, who, when he was the Winter Soldier, basically fought against him in the Korean War. And the history of Isaiah Bradley in this episode is almost one-to-one with the comics. So in the comics, he's referred to as the Black Captain America. He was one of 300 black U.S. soldiers who were experimented on post-World War II to replicate the super soldier serum. He was the only survivor out of those 300. The others, like, died from complications with experimentation and everything, and the entire incident was covered up by the government. And Bradley, I think similar to Steve, kind of wanted to do something good with what he was given of like this curse of like being the one. So he stole the Captain America outfit, went to Europe to help some battle at some point, and was arrested and put in prison for 17 years. So the introduction we have to Isaiah Bradley in this episode is pretty one-to-one with that. He is a super soldier who is living. Nobody knows about him. The entire incident was covered up. I think he said he was in prison for 20 or 30 years, though.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And again, that chalk that up to the MCU timeline. But yeah, I was very surprised that we touched on this in this show.
This could be really interesting to handle. I mentioned this last week. This is a much more direct one-for-one where, like, Black Americans would go fight in World War One and World War Two, and basically be heroes for their country, and then come back and face discrimination. And that's literally what happened to this character. It seems like with Isaiah Bradley, did essentially stepped up to fill in the Captain America role after Captain America was frozen in ice, and comes back and is arrested. And it just like goes to show you the discrimination between, or that Black Americans face coming back from war. So I hope they go into that a little bit further, and I want to see Sam and him interact more.
Yeah, definitely. And I know I forget his name, but his grandson who answers the door apparently is Patriot in the comics. So again, another example of a Young Avengers team member being introduced in the background. So maybe we get something with that down the line. But yeah, I'm with you about just the implications of this and introducing this into the show, where it was very subtle last week about the issues of race, but here it's much more in your face, and I think they're handling it in a way that's surprising to me and like very direct, and they're not shying away from it, which I appreciate.
So, speaking of that, how did you feel about the subsequent scene with the cops?
Yeah, so I was so uneasy in that scene, and on the notes, the first thing I write under Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 2 was Jesus Christ, because that scene, the second I saw the cop car, I was like, Jesus Christ, they're doing this right now. Like, it got a physical reaction out of me. And
yeah, sorry, keep going.
I was holding my breath that entire scene because I thought we were going to go down an entirely different rabbit hole of what the next few episodes were going to be.
Totally. I'm wondering if that was, obviously I think that's the most overt depiction of race issues in this show. In the despair, the cop literally goes up to Bucky and says, "Is this man bothering you?" Like, obviously he's taking the white man's side in that situation. I'm wondering if that was a little bit, I don't know how I feel about that scene. Like, I wonder if it's a little bit heavy-handed, because obviously it is showing the real life disparity between how police treat white and black people in this country. But I feel like that scene doesn't really say too much about it beyond the surface level of that. You know what I mean? Like, it was very quick, and we didn't really get a chance to reflect on that, of Sam really talking about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that what I could see happen here, because I think you're right, it does happen pretty quickly, and I think it's the point to have it just be kind of overt, because
Sure.
I'm imagining that because we had the bank scene in the first episode, and now this in this episode, we have 4 episodes left. Clearly Sam is going to reach a point where he's like, hey, as a black man, it is my duty to like become this symbol. I owe it to Steve and to like my nephews and just like the world, right? About showing what this symbol can mean. I think the show is probably going to be peppered with a bunch of other, maybe not so subtle issues of like racial profiling, racial injustice, to have Sam reach that point where he's like, hey, it's not as much about me anymore, right? And like this is something I should be doing for the greater good of people who look like me, who can look at me, and I can do my duty to like change perceptions and the way that all of this like systematic stuff is working. Because I do think, like you're saying, it's very timely, right? We touched on that last week and a bit here, but I think the MCU, which presumably will reach a point where we get a Sam Wilson Captain America movie, right? Like this is the origins of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like having a Captain America film, I think that is critical of the United States and their treatment of black people through the lens of someone representing the nation, I think is going to be something that is obviously going to be overt, right, with dealing with the complications of that. But I think they're peppering it now, right, so they can reach that point where we can get more in depth with it.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Just at first blush, I was like, I didn't feel like we got too much time to sit and stew with that, but it is like, I think the show's pacing is like, the show just kind of wants you to keep going, and
Yeah.
I agree. We will see more. And even if some certain scenes don't hit the way that Marvel wants it to, I'm glad at least that they're at least trying to talk about these topics, because superhero movies we know don't have to be just stupid popcorn movies, right? Like they sometimes are, but they have the opportunity to talk about real important issues, and even if they stumble along the way, I'm glad that they're at least attempting to convey these stories, and I'm hoping by the end of it is impactful, because you're right, I do think the potential and likely turnout of Sam Wilson adopting the Captain America mantle and having his own solo movie will be incredibly important, and I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, like the day there is a Captain America poster in a movie theater that features Anthony Mackie front and center, that is going to be a moment, like
And
that's going to be a big deal.
just called Captain America.
Exactly. Yeah, like no modifications of it. There's probably going to be a subtitle because of like that's how the MCU works, but yeah, just Captain America, like Anthony Mackie top billing, like that's going to be something, that will be surely talked about. And I do like that we're seeing the origins of that through television, because like you're mentioning, it is a complex thing that the MCU doesn't really tackle too often. So allowing it to breathe in this format, I think will just only help to bolster Sam Wilson, the next Captain America, the way it took Marvel Studios a couple movies to get Steve Rogers,
Totally.
So, very, very happy that we're dealing with this in this show, because on our predictions episode, both of us really wanted them to do this, so I'm glad they're sticking to it.
Yeah, I'm really glad, because there was totally a world where they weren't reflective and seeing what was happening in the world, and if they released a show that wasn't addressing those things, I think that would have been incredibly dumb. But I'm obviously we're at that point now where, yes, this is a very overt scene, but they're at least in that direction and they're tackling it, and this is a good thing. So I'm glad that they're talking about these things.
Yeah, because the last thing I'll say on just dealing with issues like this on this stage, right? Like Marvel comic books in general, touch on issues like this all the time. Like the people who write, not everybody, but like the people who write comics usually are pretty progressive in the way they look at, talking and criticizing social issues. Like, again, that comics in the U.S. began sort of as a way to critique the government and the United States, at least in America.
Captain America punched Hitler before the United States joined the war effort.
Sure, yeah, and like even like on a super like Donald Duck comics were talking about like criticizing the wealth of the 1%, and they were masking it behind like a children's imagery so they could just criticize and critique society and structures in our society. And comic books and superhero comic books have done this for a long time. So seeing like you said, the prime Marvel at this point getting into that, I'm very happy to see that. Like it's been really fun so far with the MCU. Obviously, there have been moments where we get things like that, and like Black Panther notably was a huge moment for this film franchise, and like addressing not even like directly, but like just being such a great thing for representation, but like actually critiquing now, I think is something that moving forward the MCU has every opportunity to do really well. And if they don't do that when it's like something that makes too much sense to do it in, I will probably be let down.
I think WandaVision started the precedent, and Phase 4 in general has started the precedent that MCU projects can tackle more than just surface level superhero stories.
Yes.
Obviously, like what you said, Black Panther was an incredible movie for representation, and it also addressed, like, with Killmonger's whole arc, he was addressing like the inequalities that Black people face around the world, and like he is one of, if not the most compelling villains in the MCU because he's totally right. Like, he's incredibly right, and I think going forward we can expect MCU projects. Maybe not all of them.
Yeah, like Guardians 3 isn't probably going to touch on anything super deep, right? Like,
but I think we're at that point now where I'm sure Kevin Feige and directors going into projects want to discuss these things and are looking at the world and how it is now, and there's so much to say about it. And doing that in the world's biggest stage has like such an impact to it, like such a huge important impact to it. And I'm glad that the like biggest movies and biggest projects in the world are looking at that. So it's important.
Yeah, I agree. And like, I think the last thing we can say about this in general is like, I know like Thor Ragnarok even touched on like colonialism. So like, I don't think us talking about this way or having expectations like this out of the MCU, like obviously it's not doing anything on the level of like an Academy Award winning film that touches on these issues, right? But like there is something to say about the highest grossing film franchise of all time with so many billions of eyes on it, like touching on these things, right? Is like, it's the same reason why Black Panther was so big. It's like representation matters. And like, I think if you have all these eyes from many different viewpoints, seeing some of their favorite characters deal with things like this, it will open their eyes and get them starting to think about it. And I think that is important, even if it is just like surface level at times, or if it isn't 100% doing its like everything in its willpower to say something and critique something. Like, it's still an important thing that's happening because of how huge the MCU is. And I'm 100% with you. So
Totally.
So the fight scene was cool.
You talking about the truck scene?
Yeah, I really liked that. That was a good action set piece, I thought.
Yeah, nice and quick. Honestly, I don't like when action scenes overstay their welcome, and it felt pretty quick and easy. With with John Walker coming in and his, I had to turn the subtitles on because I was a little confused when they were talking in the truck. His partner Lamar Hoskins, his name, like his sort of superhero name or whatever, is Battlestar. And I was like, is he making a Battlestar Galactica reference? But I think that's just his like code name.
Yeah, I think that's his comic name probably. But
yeah, it was cool to have the tension of them coming in and sort of saving the day for a little bit, and Bucky catching the shield like he did in Winter Soldier, and like glances at it and he's like, nah, I can't think about this right now. I'll give it back to you for a sec. I loved that. That was great.
Yeah, I was really conflicted too, because like in that scene, I thought it was a really well done action scene, right? It's a cool set piece that they're doing. They're fighting and flying around these two trucks, and it was shot really well, how a lot of the MCU fight scenes have been, you know, and like then the Captain America like theme kicks in, and it's like, fuck yeah, Sam Wilson, Bucky Barnes are fighting, and then it's like, wait, no, the theme is for John. I don't like this. Like, it feels weird, it feels wrong, but it was still super exciting seeing them, like Bucky and Sam fighting to that theme. But yeah, it made me uncomfortable, like having the actual, you know, for our ears only, Captain America theme associated with this guy. That was very strange for me.
Right, and we also got that at the beginning of the beginning of the episode with the Star Spangled Banner
Yeah.
song that we heard from Cap 1, and we heard like the instrumental version when John Walker was running out. So yeah, they're really doubling down on him like appropriating that mantle of Captain America, and it just feels so wrong. It just feels like he you're meant to hate him, and the Twitter reactions to him are of course along those lines, but right now he's not a terrible human being. Like, we don't have the evidence to support that idea right now.
Right.
But he's still a douche, right? Like, you don't want to like him, and he has that attitude to him where he is very cocky, and he climbs up on the truck and he says like a one-liner, and it instantly like gets his ass handed to him. So
Yeah.
it is funny to see that dynamic with him, and it does feel wrong. It just feels so wrong.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Sam and Bucky for a bit? Because this episode, I think they're shining together, honestly. Like, they have such a great back and forth, and I'm really liking it. And I think Sam is bringing more out of Bucky, and I guess Anthony Mackie's bringing more out of Sebastian Stan to play off each other than I felt he ever did with Chris Evans. For Bucky specifically.
Right. I agree. I think there are too many good lines to pull from this. I was writing stuff down, and I was like, there's too much. Like, everything that they say to each other is so memorable. The one that's the conversation where they first meet up in the episode, talking about the big three aliens, androids, and wizards, and then eventually Bucky's like, "What are you talking about, Gandalf?" And then Sam like goes on a sentence, and then immediately is like, "How do you know about Gandalf?" It's like there's just so much good back and forth between the two of them, and obviously they're trying to hold up this idea that they don't like each other, but they obviously do, because they're playful and there's a back and forth, and it's so delightful. I agree with you. I think their relationship is a little bit more, obviously more complex than either their relationship to Steve, but it's more fun too. I really am looking forward to seeing their relationship progress, because they're going to be the best of friends that are just complete assholes to each other.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like, I really love the friendship between Sam and Cap, or Sam and Steve, but like, I thought that was so well done, and I love the two of them as a duo, as like partners doing all this stuff. And I like, from Winter Soldier on, I really was hoping that Sam would get the shield instead of Bucky, even though like timeline wise he's known Bucky longer, but just the way that they characterize those two relationships with Steve. So I think on that level, because I was already so on board with Sam, like having him step up and then Bucky sort of coming to match him and sort of play off each other and fill in his sort of role that he had to Steve, I really like. And I like that there's that friction there. All the stuff about when they were sneaking, that was so funny. I was loving that.
The White Wolf.
Yeah, the White Wolf joke, that was really good. Yeah, I loved it. I love seeing the two of them together. And you're right, they're absolutely going to reach a point where they're best buds and fighting crime together. So looking forward to that.
I think I love both of them. I think Sam right now for me is like the clear standout. I loved before they met Isaiah walking up on those kids, and the kid was like, "Oh, it's the Black Falcon." And he's like, "No, it's just Falcon. What are you, the black kid?" And it's just like, and he goes to the other kid, like, "I got him." It's just so funny. Like, Sam has Anthony Mackie just has a really like approachable and funny and playful disposition to him, and like he already is, he embodies like Captain America already. So
for sure.
He just has to realize that himself, his character. So man, this is a good episode in terms of just the dialogue in general. It's a really well written episode.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'll say one thing that I was a little bummed about, and I hope we continue to flesh it out on the momentum we were going at before, but like using Bucky, because I know the show's talking about a lot of things, but like using Bucky to talk about men's mental health, right, and like his therapy thing. This episode, it was funny, but it was very much like they both want to be the tough guy. It's like, oh, we don't need help, right? Like, I think it was a funny scene, and I do think there was still a moment of pause for him and like reflection before he left with the doctor, right? So I hope we do continue to explore that with his character. But if we don't, I understand that we're touching on a lot of other themes, but specifically for Bucky, I'm really liking him a lot. I always thought the Winter Soldier was just a cool character as the Mystique, but fleshing out Bucky, giving him lines, I'm seeing that he's a really like interesting character that goes against a lot of the hero leads we have in the MCU so far, right? Because like I think there's an expectation now for Bucky or the White Wolf, if that's his new name, to like be the hero that Falcon was or that Cap was or Black Widow, right? Like on that level. But I like that he is like aware of the darkness in him and he's like, hey, if I gotta like really get my hands dirty the way I have in the past, I won't not do that. Like I that's kind of refreshing, I think, for a leading character like this.
He's like if Clone Wars Anakin turned into Vader and then came back as good Anakin. He just has like that level of snark to him where he's like, I'm 109 and I was made into a killing machine and now I'm normal again. Like this is all sorts of wrong, and he just obviously he carries that with him. Yeah, I think they're handling the dichotomy of both characters very well. I agree with you. There is a lot to the show is trying to encompass, but so far I think it's doing a good job. I really like how this episode shows the flag smashers and how it portrays them, because like we were saying last episode, I was like, I hope it's not again like this sort of generic Marvel stuff, but it might end up being that. This episode, though, I think it kind of just shows them all as sort of normal people that have a pretty grounded like set of philosophies in that world, obviously, where they think that I think it was like the Global Repatriation Council is caring more for the people that were blipped and came back than the people that remained during those 5 years. So they sort of want it to be a little bit more equitable in that term. So yeah, I thought that was fairly interesting, and I like how it showed them as normal people and not, obviously they're super soldiers, but they're not like these inherently bad people. For them, they're trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, just like Infus Nest in Solo.
Yep.
It's I'm joking, but it is similar, right?
No,
like,
you're right.
It's the same actor, right? Like she's back. She's doing the same role. She has a mask on. She's trying to transport some vials of some things to help her people. Like, I just thought that was funny, but
Totally.
I agree. Yeah, I think I remember in our Endgame episode, I might have brought this up last week. I think Yumi and Pat all said like, "Hey, I really hope they explore these people that think Thanos was right and think those were the better days, and maybe that's how they introduce the mutants and the hatred for them." But like, no, it's just picking up in this world, there are people that think that way. So I'm glad we're exploring that soon. And I think like we touched on with WandaVision, like the continued focus on the blip as a huge moment for this universe, I think I'm glad we're still mining that, because there's a lot to go through there.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think that's one of the most interesting aspects in the entirety of the MCU and just what that means for the future going forward. And I'm sure it will be like a looming presence over at least Phase 4. So yeah, I totally agree. I'm glad we're seeing more of that, and we're not just moved on. Like Far From Home had like its joke, and then that was kind of it. But WandaVision was really exploring that, and now this show is pretty much focused on that in one regard. So that's great. I think it's super interesting.
Absolutely. My only other question I have is genuinely, who do you think that the text was from? Because at first I was like, oh, it's Zemo, probably, because I know he's at play in this show. But then I did think maybe it's John Walker, because I'm suspicious. And then at the end, seeing Zemo locked up in a cell, like, I don't know if he would be the one texting. Maybe it's a proxy for him or something. But like, who do you think is also after the super soldier serum?
I really hope to God, like I said, it's not John Walker. By the end of the show, I like everyone else, I probably won't like him, but I don't want him to just be the outright generic evil bad guy. I think so. They were being chased by someone on like the tarmac, right? And They mentioned, I forget that it started with a P. It was I want to say Pathfinder. It's not Pathfinder from Apex Legends. I forget what it is, but there's like a character in the end credits that has been teased, and I think it might be that person because whoever was chasing them, I think it's the person that is controlling them. I don't know who that is yet. They haven't explained that yet outright, but I think it's probably that person that we have yet to see.
Yeah, I think that's a fair expectation. I'm still gonna put my chips on Walker because I got a feeling in my gut, but yeah, because I think also with all the ways we're touching on the super soldier serum, I think maybe the largest character choice for Sam in this series outside of reclaiming the shield is going to be whether or not he should take the serum. I think that could be something interesting to explore, specifically because we see Isaiah as a black man who had to go through that forcibly, and maybe like Sam like choosing to do that. Like I could see maybe that because the serum's at play after, like Bucky said, 80 years or whatever. But I do think the serum is going to persist for the rest of this show, for sure.
Yeah, I like how they go a long way of talking about how abnormal that is. Because if they didn't do that, I would have probably just thought, oh yeah, I'm sure there's a bunch of like superpowered people. But they, from Captain America 1, it was just Captain America, right? And then now we're learning that there were others, and now in modern day there's more because I don't know where these are coming from, like the vials of all that stuff, but they're out and they're proliferating and they're growing. So yeah, I'm glad that they're showing that, hey, this is not a normal thing. Like there shouldn't be all these superpowered people.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see what next week brings us. Probably kicking off with some Hannibal Lecter Zemo talk, so that's going to be exciting. But
Yep.
Any final words or things you want to throw out there before next week's episode, before we sign off?
Not really. Like, I think next week will be the halfway point of the show, 3 out of 6, and we've only had 2 episodes, but I think it's moving at a good pace. I'm glad this particular episode had some action, but it took its time, and it really fleshed out that relationship between Sam and Bucky, and man, I'm really excited to see them just keep talking more to each other because it's a delight.
Hell yeah. I'm very much looking forward to what's going on in the future of this show. I think we're moving at a good pace. We're getting a lot done. So I'm excited to see what the next 3 episodes, or 4, will bring us. But Jack, until next week, where can the Agents of Excelsior find you?
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at FascinatedJack. Christian and I just finished wrapping my first Mon for our playthrough of Pokemon Emerald. So you can check out that whole series and the previous 2 seasons of that show on youtube.com/joyclicks or on podcast services of your choice. How about you, Christian?
Sure, you can follow me on Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok at Shun2D2, as well as here on youtube.com/joyclicks, where you are at the moment if you're watching the video version of this podcast. If you want the audio version, you can check it out on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, your given platform of choice. If you can rate or review on that platform, we appreciate it a lot because it takes a quick second if you enjoy the show to tap 5 stars, and it helps us out. So if you want to get involved further, you can also go to patreon.com/joyclicks, where at the $1 and $5 tiers, you can get a variety of perks, including producer credit at the $5 tier, like Chris Sakas and Aaron Easton. So thank you very much. And yeah, another week of Marvel down. Hopefully next week we might have some more Avengers news. I'll probably have a 150 Hawkeye by next week, so looking forward to that very much. But until then, Excelsior.
Excelsior.